The $20 bill crumpled in Connor Hayes' trembling fingers as snow pelted the windshield of his dying Honda. Outside the Starlight Diner in downtown Bozeman, Montana, warm yellow light spilled onto the empty sidewalk like a promise he couldn't afford to believe. The fuel gauge had been dancing on empty for 30 miles. The eviction notice was tucked beneath his seat, and in the back, Sophia and Benjamin sat bundled in every layer they owned, their 7-year-old faces pressed against the fogged windows. 3 years ago, Connor had been a lead systems engineer at NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center. He had a house in Maryland, a savings account, and a partner who promised forever. Then David left. The lawsuit over same-sex partner benefits went public, and NASA quietly found reasons to eliminate his position. The media painted him as a troublemaker. The legal fees consumed everything. When Child Services questioned his fitness as a single gay father, Connor took the twins and ran. Montana was supposed to be a fresh start. Remote contract work, cheap rent, nobody asking questions. But winter came early. Contracts dried up. And now they were 3 days from losing even the motel room that had become home. Connor hadn't eaten in 18 hours. The twins had shared a sleeve of crackers for lunch. Inside the diner, Marcus Thompson hunched over coffee at the corner booth. His knuckles bore fresh cuts from training, shoulders still aching from last night's underground fight. At 35, Marcus was past his prime in a sport that chewed up gay men and spat them out quietly. The official MMA circuit wouldn't touch him after he'd come out 3 years earlier. Now he fought in the warehouse matches for men who called him names between rounds, earning just enough to pay rent and send money to his teenage brother Derek back in Alabama. When Derek called that morning with news of his full scholarship to Auburn, Marcus felt like he could breathe for the first time in years. Everything he'd sacrificed had been worth it. Connor pushed open the diner door, and the warmth hit like a physical force. Sophia and Benjamin clung to his hands, their thin jackets soaked through. The waitress glanced up from her magazine, taking in their worn clothes and haunted expressions with practiced indifference. Connor's chest tightened as he scanned the menu. Burger, $12. Soup and sandwich, $8.50. Children's meal, $6.99. His mental arithmetic became a desperate prayer. 2 kids' meals would leave them with $6, maybe enough for gas to get to the homeless shelter in Helena. Maybe. They slid into a booth near the window. The vinyl seats cracked but clean. Benjamin traced patterns in the condensation while Sophia studied the children's menu with focused intensity. Knowing this might be their last real meal for a while, Marcus watched from across the room, something twisting in his chest. The man's shoulders carried a weight Marcus recognized, the particular exhaustion of someone fighting an unwinnable battle. The children's faces were too thin, their eyes too old. When the man opened his wallet and counted bills with shaking hands, Marcus saw himself 15 years ago, watching his mother pretend she wasn't hungry so he and Derek could eat. The waitress approached Connor's table. Connor's voice was barely above a whisper. "1 children's meal, please, and just water for me." Sophia looked up sharply. "Daddy, aren't you eating?" Connor forced a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "I ate earlier, sweetheart. You and Benjamin share." "Okay." Marcus felt his hands clench beneath the table. He'd lived that lie before. This wasn't just hunger. This was a father choosing his children's survival over his own dignity. Before you continue, tell us where you are watching from in the comments and subscribe to Heart Stories for more real tales of hope when it matters most. Marcus Thompson's chair scraped against the diner floor as he stood, the sound cutting through the quiet conversation. Every eye in the restaurant turned towards him as he walked across the worn linoleum, his boots marking each step. Connor Hayes looked up from the children's menu, his face pale with exhaustion. The customers watched as Marcus approached the corner booth where Connor sat with his twins. Sophia and Benjamin had finished picking at their shared meal of chicken nuggets and apple slices, their small stomachs finally quiet after hours of empty ache. Connor's glass of water sat untouched, condensation pooling on the scratched table. Marcus didn't ask permission before sliding into the booth across from them. Connor's shoulders tensed, protective instincts flaring as he moved closer to his children. In his experience, men who looked like Marcus usually brought trouble, but Marcus's voice when he spoke was gentle. "I watched you order. Noticed you didn't get anything for yourself." Connor's jaw tightened. "We're fine, thank you." Marcus studied the man across from him, taking in the careful way Connor held himself. The designer watch that didn't match the second-hand clothes. The calluses that spoke of recent manual labor. This wasn't someone who'd always been hungry. This was someone who'd fallen from somewhere much higher. "My name's Marcus Thompson, and you don't look fine to me." Connor glanced toward the door, calculating distances and escape routes. Sophia tugged at his sleeve, her intuition picking up on the tension crackling between the adults. "I'm Connor Hayes. These are my children, Sophia and Benjamin." Marcus turned to the twins, his expression softening. "You two like hot chocolate. The diner here makes it with real whipped cream." Benjamin nodded shyly while Sophia watched Marcus with the wary assessment of a child who'd learned not to trust easy kindness. Connor started to protest, but Marcus was already signaling the waitress. 3 hot chocolates, extra whipped cream, and bring this man a menu. A real menu." The waitress nodded, disappearing behind the counter. Connor's hands clenched on the table edge, pride and desperation warring in his chest. He wanted to refuse, wanted to walk away from this stranger's charity, but Benjamin's persistent cough had kept them awake for 3 nights. "You don't know anything about us," Connor said quietly. Marcus leaned back against the cracked vinyl booth. "I know you're running from something. I know those kids trust you completely, which means you're a good father. And I know that whatever brought you here wasn't your fault." Connor's laugh was bitter. "How could you possibly know that?" "Because 3 hours ago, I was getting my face rearranged by a man half my age while his friends called me names I haven't heard since high school. When it was over, they threw $200 at me like I was a dog who'd learned a new trick." The honesty hit Connor like a physical blow. Marcus continued, his voice steady but weighted with years of careful concealment. "I've been fighting professionally for 15 years. Had sponsors, had a future. Everything lined up until I made the mistake of falling in love with another man. Took me 3 years to find the courage to come out. And it took the industry about 3 minutes to decide I wasn't welcome anymore." Connor stared across the table. Recognition dawning. "You're Marcus Thompson, the middleweight who fought Rodriguez for the title." Marcus nodded. "Same Marcus Thompson who got blacklisted when I showed up to a press conference with my boyfriend. Same Marcus Thompson who's been fighting in underground matches ever since. Taking beatings from kids who think proving they can hurt a gay man makes them more of a man." The hot chocolate arrived. 3 steaming mugs topped with clouds of whipped cream. Benjamin wrapped his small hands around the warm ceramic, and for the first time in days, Connor saw his son smile. Marcus pulled out his wallet, extracting several crisp 20s. He placed them on the table. "My brother Derek called this morning. Full ride to Auburn University. Everything I've been fighting for. And sitting here tonight, watching you choose your children's hunger over your own pride. I realized something. Success isn't about what you earn. It's about what you give when you have the chance. Sometimes the most powerful connections happen between those who understand loving someone the world tells you not to love." Connor Hayes stared at the money on the table, his throat constricting with emotion he couldn't afford to show in front of his children. The crisp 20s represented more than cash. They represented hope when hope had felt impossible. His hands trembled as he reached forward, then stopped. "I can't take this," he whispered. "You don't know me. You don't owe me anything." Marcus Thompson leaned forward, his voice dropping so the twins wouldn't overhear. 3 years ago, I was where you are now, not financially, but emotionally. I had a foster brother named Jamie, 17 years old, thrown out by his family for being gay. I was too scared to help him properly. The weight of Marcus's words settled heavy between them. Connor watched as pain flickered across the fighter's scarred features. Jamie ended up on the streets in Seattle, overdosed in an alley 8 weeks later. Marcus's jaw tightened. I was still pretending to be straight while a kid who needed me was dying alone. Sophia and Benjamin finished their hot chocolate, whipped cream mustaches making them look younger than their 7 years. They began drawing pictures on napkins with crayons the waitress had brought, oblivious to the conversation. "I won't make that mistake again," Marcus continued. "I see a father trying to protect his kids, and I see a man who's been pushed out of the life he built because he had the courage to be himself. That's not charity I'm offering. That's justice." Connor's eyes filled with tears he'd been holding back for days. The full meal Marcus ordered arrived, steaming plates of burgers, fries, and grilled cheese sandwiches that made Benjamin and Sophia gasp with delight, food they hadn't seen in weeks. As the twins ate with focused intensity, Connor finally took a small bite of his burger. The taste of real meat and fresh vegetables was overwhelming after days of crackers and cheap instant noodles. Marcus watched with satisfaction as color returned to Connor's gaunt cheeks. "You mentioned NASA earlier. You recognize my name. What's your background?" Connor swallowed hard. "I was a systems engineer at Goddard Space Flight Center. Lead engineer on the James Webb Telescope's communication array. Had a team of 12. Security clearance. The whole package." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "That's not exactly entry-level work." "What happened?" Connor glanced at his children, making sure they were still absorbed in their meal. "David and I had been together for 4 years. We were planning to get married, buy a house. Then the Supreme Court ruling on federal employee benefits came down, and I filed paperwork to add him to my health insurance. The institutional homophobia was swift and quiet." Marcus guessed. Connor nodded bitterly. "No official policies changed, but suddenly my security review was taking longer than usual. Projects I'd been leading for years were reassigned. My supervisor started documenting every minor mistake." Marcus had heard variations of this story too many times. The slow-motion professional assassination that happened when institutions decided you weren't the right kind of person. David couldn't handle the pressure. Connor continued, "Said he never signed up to be the reason I lost my career. Left 3 months before the wedding. By then, NASA had found enough documentation to justify letting me go. 20-year career. Gone." The twins looked up from their drawings, sensing their father's emotional shift. "Daddy, are you okay?" Sophia asked with the concern of a child who'd learned to read her parents' moods. Connor forced a smile, wiping his eyes. "I'm fine, sweetheart. Just happy we met Uncle Marcus." Marcus's heart clenched at the word uncle, delivered so naturally by a child who instinctively understood that this stranger was safe. He pulled out his phone. "I'm calling my friend Rachel. She runs a boarding house 10 minutes from here. Safe, warm, and she doesn't ask questions about paperwork. You and the kids can stay there while we figure out your next move." Connor started to protest, but Marcus held up a hand. 2 days. Connor, give me 2 days to make some calls. I know people in aerospace consulting, defense contracting. Your skills didn't disappear when NASA let you go." As Marcus dialed the number, Connor felt something shift inside his chest. For the first time in 3 years, someone was treating his situation as a problem to be solved rather than a shame to be hidden. The diner's warmth felt different now. Not just physical comfort, but something deeper. Sometimes salvation comes from one broken person recognizing another and choosing compassion over indifference. The boarding house Rachel managed was exactly what Marcus had promised. Clean rooms with worn but comfortable furniture, thick quilts that smelled of lavender, and blessed silence. Connor Hayes tucked Sophia and Benjamin into bed, their small bodies finally warm and safe. But as Connor stepped outside to thank Marcus one more time, the Montana night revealed its darker intentions. The snow had intensified, turning the world into a whirling white maze. Street lights struggled against the blizzard, creating ghostly halos that barely penetrated the storm. From across the street, 3 figures emerged from the shadows between abandoned storefronts. Their movements were deliberate, predatory, the kind of slow approach that spoke of bad intentions wrapped in the anonymity of a snowstorm. "Well, well," one of them called out, his voice cutting through the wind. "Look what we have here." Family man out for a late-night stroll. Marcus stepped closer to Connor, his fighter's instincts immediately cataloging threats and distances. The men were young, probably early 20s, wearing oversized jackets that could hide weapons. Their swagger suggested they were used to intimidating people who couldn't fight back. "Just keep walking," Marcus said quietly, but the leader laughed. "Walking in this weather, that doesn't seem very neighborly." His voice carried the particular cruelty of someone who enjoyed fear. "We were just wondering if you gentlemen might have some extra cash to help us get through the holidays." Connor's mind raced with calculations. The boarding house was 50 yards behind them. His children were inside, safe but vulnerable if this turned violent. Marcus was a professional fighter, but he'd been beaten up only hours earlier, and there were 3 attackers. The second man pulled his jacket aside just enough to reveal the handle of a knife. Nothing personal. Understand, just the way business works around here, especially for folks who don't quite belong. The emphasis on belong was unmistakable. These weren't just robbery attempts. They were hate crimes waiting to happen. Connor had experienced enough discrimination to recognize the particular venom that came with targeted violence. Marcus stepped forward, placing himself between the attackers and Connor. "You boys picked the wrong night and the wrong targets." The leader snorted. "Did we big guy thinks he can take all 3 of us? What are you, some kind of bodyguard for your boyfriend?" There, Marcus felt something cold settle in his chest. Not anger, but the kind of focused calm that had carried him through 15 years of professional fighting. These men had no idea what they were dealing with. "I'm going to give you one chance to walk away," Marcus said, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. "Turn around, go home, and pretend this never happened." The third man pulled out his phone and pointed it at them. "This is going on social media. Gay boys getting what they deserve on Christmas Eve." That was Marcus's breaking point. Not the threat of violence, but the idea that Connor's children might someday see their father being humiliated and attacked. The idea that this moment of hatred would be preserved and shared for entertainment. Marcus moved with the precision of someone who had spent years training his body to be a weapon. The first attacker rushed forward with his knife, but Marcus caught his wrist, twisted until bones cracked, and sent him crashing into a snowbank. The second man swung wildly, but Marcus ducked and delivered an uppercut that lifted the attacker off his feet. The third man with the phone tried to run, but Marcus caught him in 2 strides, grabbing his jacket and slamming him against a brick wall. "If I ever see that recording anywhere," Marcus said, his face inches from the man's terrified expression, "I will find you, and next time, I won't be this gentle." He released the man, who stumbled away into the snow, followed by his 2 companions. Connor stood frozen, adrenaline and relief flooding through him. For the first time in 3 years, someone had fought for him. Someone had put themselves at risk to protect him and his children. Marcus turned back to Connor, checking for injuries. "Are you hurt? Did they touch you?" Connor shook his head, unable to speak. Tears froze on his cheeks as the magnitude of what Marcus had done settled over him. "Let's get inside," Marcus said, his voice gentle again. "Your kids are probably wondering where you went." As they walked back toward the boarding house, Connor understood that something fundamental had shifted. He was no longer running from his past. Sometimes protection comes not from institutions or laws, but from someone who sees your humanity and refuses to let others take it away. 2 years later, Connor Hayes stood in the gleaming lobby of Aerospace Dynamics Corporation in Missoula, Montana, adjusting his tie as he prepared for another day as their lead systems integration engineer. The company had headhunted him after Marcus's connections led to a consulting project that showcased Connor's expertise with satellite communication arrays. Now he supervised a team of 8 engineers and held the kind of security clearance that NASA had tried to strip away. Sophia and Benjamin, now 9 years old, attended Hellgate Elementary where their teachers knew them as bright, curious children whose father never missed a school event. Connor had learned to parent not from a place of fear and desperation, but from stability and confidence. The twins played soccer in a league Marcus had helped them join, and their laughter filled the small house Connor had been able to buy in a neighborhood with good schools and neighbors who waved hello instead of crossing the street. Marcus Thompson had made a different kind of comeback. After the night he'd protected Connor and his children, something had shifted in how he saw his own worth. He'd stopped taking underground fights and started training young fighters at a gym he'd opened with financial backing from several investors who believed in second chances. The gym specialized in working with LGBTQ youth who needed both physical training and emotional support. But more than the business sense, Marcus had found something he'd been searching for his entire life, a family that chose him back. Connor and the twins had become a central part of Marcus's world, not as charity cases, but as the people who reminded him daily that love multiplies when shared freely. On this particular December morning, 2 years after their Christmas Eve meeting, Marcus arrived at Connor's house to drive the twins to school. A routine they'd established that gave Connor time for early morning engineering reviews and gave Marcus the joy of being Uncle Marcus to children who genuinely loved him. Sophia and Benjamin burst through the front door wearing matching winter coats that actually fit properly, backpacks stuffed with homework they'd completed the night before on a dining room table that didn't wobble. Their faces glowed with the kind of health that came from regular meals and 8 hours of sleep in beds that belonged to them. Uncle Marcus Benjamin called out, launching himself into Marcus's arms. Sophia showed me how to solve the math problems you taught me yesterday. Sophia beamed with pride as she demonstrated the technique Marcus had shown her for breaking down complex problems into manageable pieces, a lesson that applied to more than just mathematics. As they drove through the Montana morning, Connor watched from the window and felt something he'd almost forgotten existed. Contentment. Not the desperate relief of surviving another day, but the deep satisfaction of building something sustainable and meaningful. His phone rang with a call from Dr. Patricia Chen, the aerospace engineer who'd become not just a colleague, but a close friend. Connor, I just got word from the team in Colorado. The satellite array modification you designed is performing 30% better than the original NASA specifications. They want you to present at the International Space Conference in Houston next month. Connor smiled, remembering the NASA engineer who'd once questioned his competence, now recommending his work to colleagues across the industry. Success, he'd learned, was the best response to those who tried to diminish his worth. That afternoon, the extended family that had grown around Connor and his children gathered for their weekly dinner at Marcus's apartment above the gym. Rachel from the boarding house brought her famous lasagna. Derek, Marcus's brother, called from Auburn University where he was thriving in his engineering program. Dr. Chen and her partner joined them, along with several of Marcus's young fighters and their families. It wasn't the traditional family Connor had once imagined, but it was something richer and more authentic than anything he'd experienced in his previous life. These were people bound not by biology or obligation, but by choice and genuine affection. As they shared the meal, Benjamin asked the question that had been on his mind for weeks. Daddy, why did you and Uncle Marcus choose each other to be family? Connor considered the question carefully. Sometimes, the people who are meant to be in your life show up exactly when you need them most. Uncle Marcus saw us when we were invisible to everyone else, and we saw him when he needed to remember that he was worthy of love. Marcus looked across the table at the family he'd helped build and the family that had rebuilt him in return 2 years ago. I thought strength meant fighting alone and winning at any cost. But real strength means recognizing when someone needs help and choosing to provide it, even when it costs you something. Especially then. Sophia, wise beyond her 9 years, nodded solemnly. So we're family because we take care of each other. Exactly. Connor and Marcus said simultaneously, then laughed at their synchronicity. Later that evening, as Connor tucked his children into beds in rooms that belonged to them in a house they called home, he reflected on the journey that had brought them here. They'd started with nothing but each other and $20 in a Montana diner. Now they had everything that mattered: sorority, love, community, and the knowledge that their family was strong enough to weather whatever challenges lay ahead. Outside, snow began to fall again, but this time it looked like possibility instead of punishment. Christmas was coming once more, but this year there would be gifts under a tree, a feast shared with chosen family, and the deep peace that comes from knowing you belong somewhere in the world. Some of the most important relationships in our lives begin with strangers choosing kindness over indifference and courage over comfort. When we see someone struggling and choose to help rather than look away, we don't just change their story, we discover who we're capable of becoming ourselves. What moment of unexpected kindness changed your life? Share your story in the comments below. Someone reading might need to hear exactly what you have to say. Subscribe to Heart Stories for more real tales of hope, courage, and the families we choose when the world feels too big and too cold to face alone.